Hello, welcome to the Sideboard here at the Star City Games Team Constructed Open in Richmond, part of the SCG Tour, brought to you by Carnox Chairs and Ultimate Guard. I'm Nick Miller alongside legacy expert Brad Bonin. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Nick. How you doing?
Pretty good. You were very excited at the launch of Modern Horizons. A card, Arkham's Astrolabe, has just spurred this movement in Legacy to just try all kinds of stuff. You get to play a bunch of basic lands, and you get to do a bunch of other things. And the combination of Astrolabe and Wrenn and 6 has really changed the landscape of what Legacy looks like. And you, and working with people like Daryl Ayers and stuff like that, and people like that, have really shown what you can do in this format now. And we're here talking to you about the 4-color control deck. So talk about how this deck was formed and what has happened to it since then.
Sure. So originally, I was trying to make a lot of these cards work in Miracles, because all Miracles wants to do is be able to cast red cards without playing basic mountain. So every time they print a Prism effect, especially a 1-cost one, you try to break it, and you try to see if you can finally cast Pyroblast off of Island, which we figured out how to do. It just turns out you don't want Source to Plowshares in that deck. From there, the goal of most of the decks I try to play, which are all the same goal as Miracles, is just beat Delver. Smash Delver, try to figure out how to beat everything else, because Delver's like 30 or 40% of every paper room. So you want cheap removal, you need cheap card selection, and then you need something to win the game with, but it doesn't have to be particularly efficient.
Right,
so,
and that's kind of exactly what this deck is. You have the blue suite of cards that we expect to see in the blue mid-range decks. Ponder, Brainstorm, Force of Will, that kind of stuff. Snapcaster Mage, are used to that from Miracles. Baleful Strix blocks, kills Delvers, draws your card. And then you have the win cons. Jace, but then
Wrenn and Wasteland is a win con on
Wrenn and 6 here. And this is the card, Wrenn and 6 in particular, is the one that is shaping the format.
So
everyone that is playing this format has to play against and have a plan against this card.
The fact that Hydroblast right now is as good as Pyroblast is just on the back of Wrenn and 6 and Dreadhorde Arcanist. The fact that this is a 4-color deck that plays basic lands, so the way that you're supposed to target 4-color decks is with things like Blood Moon, Back to Basics, and Wasteland, and none of those cards do anything if you're heads up. You just have your 3, your 2 islands in your swamp and your Astrolabe, and you just fetch up a duel if you need a 4-mana spell, and otherwise you just leave your fetch lands uncracked, and their Wastelands don't do anything. And if they choke you, you just tap your bad lands in your swamp and your Wasteland through Astrolabe, and you still make blue mana, and it still untaps. You just get to ignore a lot of color restrictions. It does open up more weaknesses, like Arkham's Astrolabe is heinous against cards like Leovold and Narset, and also cards like Chalice of the Void, because the first half will keep you from drawing and you're just discarding a card to basically fix your mana. That's not worth a card in Legacy. It's already barely worth a card when it cycles. And against Chalice, obviously it's a 1-drop, it doesn't do anything. And then you just want to diversify your removal as much as possible, so you need Abrupt Decay to be able to remove an enchantment or just uncounterably kill something like a Delver if you don't want to have to worry about days. You need Kolaghan's Command so that if you have to spew your Plague Engineer into a day's turn or something like that, you can buy it back later. This card's actually probably the best card in the deck.
Plague Engineer, everywhere.
The only way that these 4-color stew decks can usually lose to Delver is True Name. You just play a 4th land, play a Plague Engineer, you just make them have a Force of Will and a blue card, and otherwise you just name Merfolk or Rogue or whatever, their True Name dies, they bolt it later, and they have to find a second True Name just to start trying to kill you again. And then you still just have all the card selection, your Jaces, your Strixes. Most of the deck floats, so very often if your hand's not all lands, you're going to do something important on the board, because all of your spells affect the board.
One interesting thing about this deck, Lightning Bolt is nowhere to be found. And that is surprising, especially when you can play 4 colors here. But when you inspect the deck, it's really a blue-black deck that just so happens to have a touch of red and green.
So we've tried builds with Bolt.
In the open, that is time in the round.
Continue.
We've tried builds with Bolt, but the problematic creatures for the deck are like Tarmogoyf type cards. And Lightning Bolt doesn't actually kill any Planeswalkers right now. You show red mana in your deck, your Jace opponent is going to plus. So your Bolt is not killing Jace anyway. Wrenn automatically goes to 4, and bolting Narset after they already got a card out of it is sort of the same as just playing another Decay or whatever. So Lightning Bolt doesn't actually do anything that the deck wants, even if you could cast it more reliably. You just need to be able to Fatal Push Tarmogoyf. Because you have so many extra permanent types between 6 Planeswalkers and 4 artifacts, your opponent dazes an Astrolabe and they go to 5/6, and you're just going to die.
Sure.
Strix is the same. You play a Strix to try to block and they bolt it, the Goyf's a 5/6, it's going to kill you. So you really need to make sure that you can answer that card. Even though it's not particularly popular, your opponent will just get you with it.
Right. That's the must-answer creature, because you have a ton of answers for
everything with
Delver and all that other stuff.
I've had a lot of boards where my opponent will flip a Delver and I'll play an Engineer and then minus my Wrenn. I learned today that Dreadhorde Arcanist and Delver of Secrets are both wizards. That was nice. So they have a 0-power Arcanist, they can't flash anything back, and all their unflipped Delvers are dead.
All right, pretty good there. The other thing here, you get to play all these basic lands, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
But the thing I saw a couple weeks ago when we really saw this deck shine was you get to play blue source into Wrenn 6 when you have the Astrolabe draw and stuff like that protects you from Wasteland, which is kind of the thing everyone's doing with Wrenn 6.
Yeah.
So you are doing the Wrenn 6 thing and are insulated from it.
Yeah. And Wrenn is also just an insane blue planeswalker. You just make all of your land drops for the whole game and your opponent can never cast the next one. Like, people used to cast Mother of Runes. Good luck.
Not anymore.
Yeah, between Engineer and Wrenn, you really got to love that card to still register it.
All right, so main deck pretty simple, kill everything, draw cards, win however you want.
Yeah.
Sideboard, we've got your Graveyard Hate here, Surgical and Spellbomb. We have a ton of blasts. It's been a while since multiple blasts are seeing play. Here you've got 3 red variants, 2 blue.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about Force Negation as your other kind of control options here in the sideboard. Where's the shining?
So Force Negation's obviously great in like Belcher-esque, Reanimator-esque, like all-in combo matchups, but it's also just a version of Counterspell that you can pretty reasonably play in fair matchups. So like if you're playing a sort of grindy matchup, but you're confident that Force is not worth an extra card, your opponent's going to cast Jace the Mind Sculptor eventually. So sometimes you board in your Force and Negations and all your blasts, but you still cut your forces because you're not always going to have the blue card to pitch or whatever. In fair mirrors, I leave in the forces a lot more than otherwise because there's so few cards that matter. But a lot of the time, you just want Negate, Snapcaster, Negate. And costing the 3rd mana and having a pitch cast mode is the perfect mix of like a sideboardable card in Legacy and a card I'm happy to have in my hand at all times.
Yeah, absolutely. You got another Plague Engineer here.
Yep.
One thing that we have to take away from this is how much Modern Horizons affected Legacy, which was kind of a surprise at a set driven for a format. What do you think it's done to the format as a whole, good or bad?
I think it's a net bad for deck diversity, but it's a net good for rewarding skill and for more fun. Activating Planeswalkers and casting all of your spells every game and not randomly getting Stifle Days wastelanded out of games is the best part of Legacy. The spells are so awesome, I can't really be opposed to everybody casting all their spells.
Sure.
In a format where you could show and tell in a Grizzlebrand, I don't really see why you can't cast a red-green card off of Island.
When you put it that way, it does seem a lot more fair. Wrapping up here, Thoughtseizes, you got an extra one in your main deck.
Yeah, your combo matchup is pretty bad.
Leovold.
A lot of garbage removal targeting Delver, so you just have like 10 dead cards you just need to shove and board in anything that's reasonable.
Okay. Wrapping up, how do you like the deck in the current meta? Are there any outliers in the format that you're kind of afraid of? Because we've seen the rise of things like Bomberman and stuff like that.
So all week testing, I kept running into some of the Lotus Box guys. I don't know if they knew it was me, but I knew it was them. And they were on this like seemingly heinous Allurin deck. But all of their cards are just Baleful Strix. They have 4 Baleful Strix, 4 Codal, 4 of the guy with Hideaway, and then the Strix that you can pay a life to pick up your guys.
Right.
So I just couldn't 1-for-1 them. I just died to like 2/2 beats every game.
It's the old food chain model.
Yeah. Bomberman's the same. It's a combo deck that also has Chalice, so that's like a 2-pronged problem. Eldrazi's pretty reasonable because you have Baleful Strix, but the red prison decks are kind of rough because you like want to board in Hydroblast and they play a Chalice and you're like, well, this Hydroblast costs 1. This is not what I signed up for.
Feels bad.
So the closer you can get to your deck doing something either combo-y or centered around Chalice, the better off you are against this deck because it's just basically a Jund deck with blue. It's a pile of cheap removal and clunky creatures.
Sure.
So if your plan is to ignore creature combat and kill me, I can't do a ton about it.
Well, your squad's off to what? 4-1 start?
5-0 or 4. I don't know how many rounds it's been, but we haven't lost.
All right, undefeated is the best record.
Yes.
Brad, thanks for joining me here in the
Yeah, of
Sideboard.
course.
Stay tuned to Star City Games all weekend long for the action here in Richmond.